It's been a while since we've done Gospel of Matthew, so here we are in chapter 23 with the third of 7 woes. Verse 16, Woe to you blind guides who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing, but if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. You blind fools, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that has made the gold sacred? And you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing, but if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by his oath. You blind men, for which is greater, the gift on the or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by it and him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. So, Pharisees were being inconsistent. They were using selective responsibility. Our responsibility is to use all responsibility and to take on the full complement of responsibility that comes when the Lord tells us to do something. Our responsibility when we receive the prophetic word of the Lord, if it actually comes, and it's not from some flaky guru that says, oh, blah, 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 and he or she has zero track record. Our responsibility is to hear when the Lord is speaking and to receive it and to apply all of it. There are good portions to the word of the Lord, and there are bad portions sometimes to the word of the Lord. And when we take this selective responsibility and we take out some and we toss out the rest, when the Lord has said it, we can reap some nasty consequences for that selective responsibility. If, however, we spit out bones, and the Lord said, spit that out, and we take the stuff that He tells us to take, we will never go wrong. Our responsibility is to apply His responsibility, to take on His responsibility, and to walk in it, to receive the full counsel.
Because we have to remember that He works all things together for good. That
not just some things.
Yeah, and that he brings us in situations of tests and trials and pain to grow our character, to grow our perseverance, and to grow our reliance on Him. He doesn't want us to live a life where we can rely solely on ourselves. He wants us to live a life where we've learned how to rely on Him. And in our weakness, He is
strong.
Yeah. And so these scriptures are here, and if we pull them, weave the principles together and walk the principles out, we can't. He's right. The selective responsibility gives the enemy power in our lives. We can't just take what we think is good and discard what we think is poor, bad, or hurtful. We have to take the whole counsel, or bad things happen.
Yeah. So what did James write to the diaspora? To the 12 tribes that were scattered abroad, what was the way he opened this letter up?
Count it all joy when you fall into trials and temptations of various kinds, depending on the version you're reading from.
Yes. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect. Completed responsibility. We toss out the things the Lord tells us to toss out, but we keep the things the Lord tells us to keep, whether or not they appear appealing and good or bad or negative to us. Sometimes He wants us to have the temptation, and not the temptation necessarily, but the trial, depending on the version. Yes, you're right. He wants us to have the trial so that we can learn how to persevere through some things, so that we don't get limp-wristed when something gets negative. So we know how to push through when He's saying, okay, it's time to push through, and you're going to have adversity and opposition. Imagine that. Joseph said, blessed in the land of my adversity. And He has made me to forget the pain of my father's house. Now, if we forget too much, if we forget the God of our father's house, and we can end up swamping up into idolatry. But the pain that we need to work in forgiveness towards, as Joseph needed to learn forgiveness towards his brothers, so that he didn't massacre them and with them 10 of the 12 tribes. Our responsibility is to take on everything the Lord tells us to take on, and not just the things that seem pleasant to us. let the steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be, and James says this, perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So what James is saying is that it's possible to be perfect and complete, lacking nothing, as God calls perfection, and perfection is just another way of saying brought to the full, fulfilled, completed. I've got this task for you, and you've completed this task. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Father. Our responsibility is to take everything that the Lord gives us and to reject everything the enemy has for us. Reject the good that we see that the enemy has for us. If he says, hey, look at the tree in this garden. That's a good-looking fruit. And Eve said, yeah, you're darn right, it's a good-looking fruit. There is a good that is not submitted to God. There is a good that is the eternal enemy of the best.
Yeah. And John Bevere wrote a whole book on it. Is it good or is it God?
Yeah.
With the same principle.
Imagine that.
It's a principle the church needs to look at more carefully.
Yeah. Teaching on one John Bevere teaching in series, as we are currently doing in the midst of, and we're dealing with another John Bevere teaching. There you go. Yeehaw. Bring some hard truth. Take some hard truth. Take the medication that is bitter. It will help you in the end. And reject the spirit of pharmakia. Sorcery. Yeehaw. So, gang, responsibility. Do your responsibility. Embrace your responsibility so that you can have the full measure of the harvest of what God wants you to have, even with testing. And don't just say, oh, it's the meat, or oh, it's the stuff, the gold, and not the temple itself. It is about the temple, because you are the temple. Take on the full responsibility of recognizing the holy place that you are. You are not a garbage can. You are a holy place. You're not a miserable, no good, bastard sinner. You are a holy place, a son of the Most High. And I bless you with that revelation and the application and the fortitude, ovarian or testicular, as the case may be, ovarian or testicular fortitude, to take on the responsibility and to drive through as you handle the testing. Be blessed, gang. We love you.